How are you? Welcome back. In today's episode, we're going to be asking to mow or not to mow. Now, we've already discussed on several occasions that we know a lot of these catch crop sort of type options went in the autumn winter of last year. But in many cases, a lot of growers reach for these types of options that hadn't actually grown them before, for the reasons mainly due to forage requirements after that widespread drought through a lot of the UK last year. But now they have been established, now they're looking so well in many cases. The big question is, at what point do we take these crops? We've also got to think about the weather and the conditions and the windows to allow us to get these crops in their best order. But what is the right answer to when to leave them or when to take them? Considering the fact that a lot of these crops may have been grown for the first time in many situations this year, yes, there is that little bit of advice, that little bit of input because we've never grown them before. But harvesting any crop should always be, in my eyes, subjective to what it is that you, the end user, requires, but also what it is that you're growing. We know that over the last few weeks, it's currently the 13th of April, that in some situations, some of these catch crops have started to be harvested, perhaps up to 3 weeks ago, when we had that real good spell of warm weather for 3 to 4 days. In the last 10 days, we've had another window there where some of those crops were taken. And the issue is, more often than not, that in many cases, you'll see, especially through the likes of social media, and especially through the likes of Facebook maybe, that farmers going out mowing earlier than they would normally anticipate, and that feedback of it's just lawn clippings, what are you doing mowing it so soon, you've wasted so much yield. Again, it's all subjective, it's all depends on that individual's requirement. In many cases, yes, I think a large proportion of those farmers who have harvested that little bit earlier are fully aware of the fact that they may have compromised that little bit of yield, but their requirements due to those significant shortages of last year were so much that they actually needed to get those crops harvested so they could start feeding something before they started seeing that back wall of the silage clamp. To another extreme, I do know some of these catch crops, again, established for the very first time after maize, were anticipated to be harvested but have actually been grazed. Even herds that haven't grazed for many years have actually been turned out and grazing these crops because of that significant requirement and need individually in that scenario. But looking at the crops that we've got in front of us today, what's going to be the best time to take these to maximise both yield and overall quality from them? Now, going back to my previous point with regards to feedback and terminology as to when it is the correct time to take these crops, yes, everything aside in terms of individual requirement, there are those optimum timings with regards to making sure that we're maximising both overall yield but also quality too. We don't want to necessarily be letting them go too far, compromising that overall quality, but at the same time we don't want to be taking them too soon and possibly missing out on a bit of that extra yield. Again, and I totally understand the reason why, there's a lot of individuals on the likes of social media, but more often than not when I sit back and read some of the comments with regards to a grower may have put up a post about their own crop and what others' thoughts are in terms of timings to take that crop, you'll get every answer under the sun, and I don't know if it always necessarily helps. So it's all about just working back to the basics and then fitting in with you with regards to your requirements, but in particular at the minute, the weather windows that we have available to us in the next coming weeks. So if we take this crop of forage rye as a working example in this field here today, if I spin round, it'll probably show the light a little bit better. So overall, this crop was drilled probably 2 weeks earlier than normal. That was because maize was harvested earlier than normal last year, and forage rye seed was harvested, therefore available to drill sooner rather than later. So as I say, with the 13th of April, we would normally expect these sorts of types of crops of forage rye to reach this stage towards the end of April, but of course we've had a relatively open back end and it was established that little bit sooner. So the crop overall, if I bring you down, if I can get this gimbal to work, come on, speed up. As you can see, oh hello, it's going all over the place. Okay, third time lucky. So this crop of forage rye is around about waist height on me. I'm just around about 6 foot tall across the entire field. So a real good uniform crop across the field and throughout. So nice and uniform. The next stage that we need to look at for these sorts of types of crops is that ear emergence. Now you should be able to see here, we're just at what I would refer to as paintbrush stage, okay? So that ear is already starting to emerge. Again, first time growers of forage rye don't necessarily anticipate that this crop has the ability to be in full ear by the end of April, beginning of May. This is your guide with regards to taking the crop at its best stage, not only for yield, but also quality too. Yes, you can build more yield from a forage rye crop, but as soon as that crop goes into stem extension, as soon as those ears are fully emerged, it starts laying down significant levels of lignin. It's getting ready to be ultimately a 6 foot tall cereal throughout the end of the year. By taking the crop just as it's coming into ear, some refer to it as bootlage, you are also maximising that overall quality. The crop isn't laying down significant lignin at that point, and that's the time for any situation, regardless of where you are in the UK, to get this at its best with regards to maximising both yield and quality too. Now that's not to say that you can leave it that little bit later if you wanted to. We've discussed again in the past how forage rye can be quite a versatile crop. If it is that you're looking for more of that buffer feed for the likes of young stock, dry cows maybe, that extra bit of lignin, that extra bit of structure and fibre from a crop that has gone into stem extension will be suitable for you and advantageous. But if it is that we're looking to maximise the overall forage potential from this for the likes of a top end dairy ration maybe, beef or sheep silage, then this is the optimum time to take it. The next thing we've got to bear in mind, of course, is those bloody weather windows. As I say, we've come off the back of 2 windows that have already appeared over the last 3 to 4 weeks. The first one being 3 weeks ago, where temperatures got up to around about 20 degrees, and we had a period of 3 to 4 days where there was a lot of grass that was taken at that time. We've just had one this last week, again a 3 to 4 day window where crops could have been taken. But as it is going forward, we may have to play that little bit of duck and dive. It may have to see a bit of a shower of rain on it one afternoon to let us pick it up the next day or two. But ultimately, this is the scenario that we're in. We've also got to balance the fact that, yes, we may lose a little bit of yield and quality in particular from that mixed weather pattern at harvest. But what we don't want to do is lose even more yield and quality by a crop such as forage rye getting that little bit too far ahead of itself, and also then knocking into that delayed post-cropping option, whether it be the likes of maize in particular. Now I'm just going to walk our way, it's even bigger here, I'm going to walk our way over to a patch that I did a post about a few weeks ago with regards to when this field was harvested for maize. There was part of the field, we all get them, where the chopper actually blocked. So we had to back up, spit the maize back out, and it left some maize standing or led down on the ground rather. This ground was drilled pretty well the next day with forage rye just as a direct drill straight into the stubble. But when the drill came in, of course, it had to lift for where the maize had been left on the ground from the blockage from the chopper. And for me, this is a real good opportunity. Again, we go back to those mistakes make magic type scenarios that shows you what you could have had. That maize stubble versus the forage that's been produced in that window over the winter that largely gets overlooked. So I'll spin the camera around now and you can see what this ground would have been. So as you can see coming up in front of us now, this is where the drill blocked. This is what we would have been left with, or what we would have left over the winter as just a standing maize stubble. In comparison, we've ultimately produced a significant amount of forage as an alternative option to give us that overwintered cover, and of course extra forage production over the winter into the new year before this ground goes back into maize again. And this actually gives us a nice clear shot with regards to our vetches. As ever, these vetches are in here and you can see them really growing up and away. They're wrapping their tendrils round the stems of the forage rye already. Will that focus in there? Can you see that wrapping itself round? So the vetch is already at that stage where it's literally now climbing with regards to holding itself within the forage rye. It's been well established, it's now climbing, and it's being part of that crop to add that extra protein but also fixed nitrogen that the following crop of maize is going to benefit, in particular where we are today. So as I say, there's no cut and dry answer with regards to at this time of the year for any crop or for any forage as to what's the best timing, because it's subjective. There's two angles to look at. It's not only the best timing for the crop, but also for any grower in the UK making any of their own decisions as to what it is that they're requiring back at home. From a technical point of view, yes, of course, those crops that have been taken over the last 2 to 3 weeks, as I say, they could have lost up to potentially 30% of their final yield production. But again, going back to that subjectiveness, if it is that that farmer, that grower is requiring that forage sooner rather than later, for whatever reason it might be, that's up to them to decide, and up to you ultimately to decide when it is that you take the crops. For crops such as this, again, like I say, it seems to be a bit of a hot topic conversation, but it's great for me to see, because it sees that growers are engaging with the opportunity of snatching these crops in between your maize crops in particular, or anywhere within the rotation over the winter. It's showing that level of engagement and those questions that are coming from it. As I say, this sort of type of crop is now perfect to go. We're maximising both overall yield and quality from it. We just need to find the right weather window to now take it. As I say, we might have to duck and dive a little bit. We might have to think about taking a bit of a cold with regards to seeing a shower of rain across some of these crops once they've been mown. But again, we need to balance that risk of what we actually lose if it is that we sat back, waited for a big weather window to ultimately delay this crop and fundamentally reduce our return in terms of yield and quality. And please remember, for those first time growers of forage rye, yes, it's technically a cereal, but we're going to be managing it and thinking of it just as we would do with our grass. We're going to be mowing it, potentially tedding it, rowing it back up, picking it up with either a forage box, a chopper, or you're going to be baling it. Do not be tempted to direct chop this crop, because as I said in the previous videos, it's a fantastic pump of water. There'll be significant water that it brings back into the clamp if it is that it's direct chopped, and significant issues caused after that. But as ever, if you've enjoyed this video, hopefully it's answered some of those key questions at this time of the year for crops such as this that we're all looking at now. Please like, share, subscribe, click that little bell, and I'll see you for next one. Bye for now.